How y'all doing this evening? This is Old Head Sports on Stream Live Tampa. Your host, Ben Walker, and I can't even really say a guest host anymore. It's my co-host, the real CEO. CEO. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. Blessed. How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, man. This episode, man, I would like to talk about mental health in sports. Um, Not necessarily qualify me to speak on the subject, but I will like to speak on my personal experiences with mental health and mental illness. My mother had mental issues when I was a child. She was a nurse, and a lot of the patients were older patients, and they would pass away. And she took it very hard. Like she took it really hard. And she ended up having mental issues because of it. Which some of it she ended up taking it out on myself. So growing up as a young child, I dealt with mental abuse and physical abuse from my mother. Um, I later, as I became an adult, I forgave her for it because I understood the reasons why she had those issues. But, when I was little, man, I dealt with some things that I probably shouldn't have dealt with at that age. I had to grow up real quick because it was times where my mother wasn't able to like communicate in situations where she really should. Like people would call the house, insurance agency, paying bills and stuff like that. And as a 8, 9, 10 year old, I would have to get on the phone and speak for her. So, I dealt with, you know, mental illness firsthand. So I understand that it is a real condition that shouldn't be laughed upon or taken lightly. You know, it is a real thing. So I would like to, say that first before I say anything about these athletes. I want to try to be as sensitive as I can. And also, this is called Old Head Sports. I want to give a perspective from an old head how I feel we dealt with sports, dealt with um, dealing with these issues and fighting through it.
Okay, I can respect that.
Have you had any personal dealings with mental illness that you would like to talk about?
I haven't personally had any dealings with mental issue that I'm personally aware of. I may have had walk-ins with someone with mental issues, and maybe I was too young to understand or identify with it.
Hmm.
But these particular people that we will be talking about today, I have seen some stuff that I haven't seen before. So,
Hmm. Okay. Um, the first person I would like to talk about, and you guys probably heard of her, Caitlin Ohashi. I hope I didn't butcher her name, but she went viral for one of her performances as a collegiate athlete. But she started out in the Olympic ranks. She was pretty good gymnast. She was headed to probably be the best in the world. Um, she was met with coaches telling her that she gained too much weight, that she was overweight, she was fat. Some of the things were said was like you look like you ate an elephant, a pig. So that really messed with um, her self-esteem. A lot of her and her peers, they got to a point where they would can compete with each other to see who could eat the least amount of calories a day. They would also get to a point where they would vomit, and it seemed like the better she got as an athlete, the more she heard this type of rhetoric, this type of criticism about how she looked. It and she also at one point injured her back. So doctors were telling her that she probably won't be able to compete again. So she ended up going back to school, going to UCLA, back to college, and that's kind of where she found the love for the sport again because she made a comment. She didn't want to be great no more because with greatness she wasn't happy. So she found the love for competing again, and it brought joy back into her life. And that's when she had that viral video that over 35 million people saw her competing when she was happy, smiling, dancing, and competing at the best level. She was basically at that time living her best life.
Correct. That was the UCLA video. Yep, 2019. And uh, it's funny you say that when she was at her best, when she was at the top of her game, she didn't like pretty much the criticism that came with it, which is kind of a
Hmm.
recurring theme too with a lot of these other athletes as well. I just had a few questions too. So if you put yourself in her shoes, if you're
Hmm.
Caitlin and you go into your place of training, because in one of her quotes she said her coaches, even her coaches, that they told her when she came in there she looked like she ate a whole pig. So if you are
Hmm.
going to your place of training, you go into the gym to get better, and you have to hear this every day mentally, and then you come home, you see it on social media.
Hmm.
What can you do if you're Caitlin to, I guess, relieve some of that mental anxiety or relieve some of that mental stress? What would you say?
I mean, it's kind of hard because normally to relieve stress, we do something that we love to do.
Hmm.
So to hear those things doing something that you love to do, then it's hard to escape from it because you're like, okay, so what else do I do? If I'm if I can't go to the thing that I love to do to escape from the stress and the pressure, what do I have? So when the doctors told her that she probably won't be able to compete again, she kind of saw it as a blessing, a relief.
That's an interesting take. My last question too is, at one point in time when she was doing the Junior Olympics, she was at an elite level. They
Hmm.
even had pictures of her and Simone Biles. They were competing
Hmm.
together, and at one
Hmm.
point in time, she was actually hot, like she had higher scores than
Yeah,
Simone.
she
She was
was ranked.
artistic.
She was ranked higher. She was
Yeah, she was
one, and
art.
she was two.
Simone was two. Yep, she was artistic
Yeah.
gymnast, and she was number one. Simone was two. She was on her way to Olympics. Obviously, we know Simone ended up going to the Olympics, and she did not. She ended up going to college. My question
Hmm.
is, do you think that she failed if she didn't go, since she didn't go to the Olympics, or how would you take that? Because I'm only asking this in the sense of, you're doing something you love to do. Do you let the
Hmm.
critics and the outside people and the influencers change or sway your decisions to do something you love to do? Or is the mental health aspect of that more important?
I think at the end of the day, man, your well-being in certain situations like that, you got to be selfish.
Okay,
And for the outside people looking in, they might feel like she didn't reach the goals that she needed to reach. But personally, I feel like if she living her best life and competing at a top level in the division that she's at, then she made the right decision. She made the perfect decision for herself.
same here. I feel the same, especially after seeing that video, that viral video. I mean, she was literally smiling the whole time. She was dancing.
Hmm.
She was doing literally what she loved to do. She found a love back, and she was in college doing it. So I think she made the
Yeah,
correct decision. Your well-being comes first.
yeah. Because her freshman year in college, I think the coach had a meeting with her and the team, and she basically like we said before, she basically told her coach that she did not want to be great. So as a coach, you like she was like, how can I honor your scholarship if you're not coming here to be great?
Correct.
UCLA is one of those programs where they've been in the top every year. So
Correct.
for For them to give you a scholarship and you to tell them that you don't want to be great, they like, well, we don't need you here. I'm glad that the coach overlooked that conversation and found a way to get to her, to get her to compete at her best level and also be happy within the skin that she's in.
Yes, I was also speaking of the coach. I was watching some videos and saw some clips, and the year that she showed up, the year before that,
Mhm.
they finished second. The year that she
Mhm.
showed up when Caitlin was a freshman and she was saying she didn't want to be great, they actually finished last that year. And
Mhm.
the coach was about to go and resign, and she saw a quote from John Wooden that
Yes.
inspired her. She ended up changing her coaching styles and started saying, "Hey, I need to be more aware of outside influences and outside of gymnastics. How can I help you
Mhm.
be a better person in life?" And I think that's what pretty much changed her Caitlin's whole life right there.
And that's what you need to be as a coach. I've coached junior NBA Magic League 12 to 15 year olds, and I also coached little league football age 4 all the way up to age 11. And I always feel like when you're coaching kids or just coaching period, but especially when you're dealing with the youth, they should leave you better than they were when they came. Now, what I mean better, it could be different things. It could be you teaching them fundamentals. It could be you teaching them discipline. It could even be you toughen them up. Whatever that is, they should leave you being better than what they was when you first saw them.
Correct.
If they're not better, then you didn't do your job as a coach.
That's a great assessment there. Very great assessment.
So, like she said, when they was outside of practicing, she would talk to the kids about life, ask them
Correct.
how what they're into. It wasn't about sports and competing when they was outside of the gym, and that's what you got to do, man. You got to learn your players. You can't coach everybody the same. You know,
That's a fact. You're speaking true facts here. And I think
yeah.
the life factor is most important too. You got to know people outside of whether you coaching basketball, gymnastics. You got to know people outside of that too, especially when they're younger.
Because everybody don't deal with adversity the same. Everybody don't
That's a fact.
hasn't went through the same things to build up that tolerance for when things go wrong.
That's a fact. Speaking facts here. So I'm gonna
But
transition. Oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna transition into the male aspect of it. A
Okay.
highly renowned, pretty much everyone in the world knows who. I mean, I'm talking besides United States, everyone in the world knows this guy, Michael Phelps. But before I even started
Hmm.
on that, I just wanted to throw out something that I read, and based on
Okay.
a study, about 35% of athletes, elite athletes, suffer from mental health. So I just want to put
Hmm.
that in perspective before I gave Michael Phelps his just due. But also, I want to throw this out there too. 35% is just a number that's reported. A lot of
Hmm.
people, especially males, they don't like to say what they're going through or they hide emotions and they don't tell people that they have some type of mental issues. It's a sign of weakness, quote unquote. So that number
Yeah, and
could be higher
that
than
goes along
35%.
outside of sports.
Correct. Correct. So that number could be a lot higher than 35%, but based on the study, it was 35%.
Okay.
But Michael Phelps, we know Olympic swimmer, won 23 gold medals, got the most ever gold
Hmm.
medals. In 2014, he was arrested and charged with a DUI. That was his second time in 10 years that he was arrested and charged with a DUI. And at that
Hmm.
time, he said his self-esteem was low. He felt he had no self-worth. He didn't leave his room. He didn't sleep. He didn't eat. And he was later on diagnosed with ADHD. And it's crazy to think that someone of that such elite status, a lot of people always say, well, you got everything you wanted, you're the best, and they don't
Hmm.
understand that that actually means nothing because a lot of times people don't feel like they have value outside of that. And I think that's what he was kind of struggling with. He ended up going to a rehabilitation center. His wife helped him out. He started getting better. He still struggles from time to time, but he started to get better a little bit after the rehabilitation center. And I just wanted to bring that up because he almost thought about committing suicide. There was a point in time where he was literally about to commit suicide. We talking about Michael
Hmm.
Phelps here. So
Yeah,
mental
one of the
illness is,
most
yeah,
decorated Olympian ever.
Olympian, correct. So, and I think one of his thought processes was what he was saying is, if he kill himself, will anybody care?
Hmm.
So I don't. It's crazy to think of a mind frame of, if you kill yourself, will anyone care? That's a deep mind frame there.
Well, when you're in deep depression, you tend to feel like no one else is going through what you're going through.
Hmm.
And then as a man, you feel less of a man because men are supposed to be strong. We're supposed
Hmm.
to be able to protect the family, the providers, and we can't be weak. No one's going to come and save us when we're weak. So you tend to hide a lot of feelings and emotions, and after a while of doing that, it kind of beats you up, and you feel like, man, I can't go on no more. Nobody's gonna understand if I do bring it up. So you know you feel like you're
And
hopeless.
I also actually wanted to double back when I said I didn't know, because this actually reminded me of, I had a homie in high school and we played ball. I played ball in high school, and he
Hmm.
ended up going to college, Kent State. His dad suffered from mental illness. I didn't see his dad that many times. The only times I saw him was like if it was on a basketball court, so I didn't know him inside the home. But the mental illness was so strong that he actually did commit suicide, which made me remember. He
Oh
did
man,
commit suicide. So he came home from college, and his dad committed suicide. So literally the day of, he was coming home. So when he came home to
man.
his father being dead. And mental illness, that's how tough it can get when you have some type of mental illness.
Hmm. Man, that's a sad situation right there, man.
It is very sad.
How is he doing now?
Honestly, he talks about it a lot. He plays basketball overseas now professionally,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
a lot of times he'll send stuff or he'll post stuff. Just actually maybe 2 weeks ago, was the anniversary of his suicide, and so he said he still has tears. It's still tough for him to get over. So
I
it's
can
not something
imagine.
that you just get over. Like, you have to be able
Hmm.
to confront that every single day. And I think his biggest thing was, he didn't really know his father had mental illness, and so
Hmm.
he always questioned, why did he do it?
Yeah.
What was so important for him to do that? What was the reasoning behind it? And I think that's what he struggles with.
Yeah. I know when I divorced from my ex-wife, um, I didn't tell. Well, when we first separated, we wasn't fully divorced. So when we separated for a year, I didn't tell anybody. So nobody knew that we were dealing with that. And I held that in, hoping, if we got back together, nobody would
Mm,
look at her any type of way. It would just be like nothing never happened. So that's why I didn't want to tell nobody. So I dealt with it for, like I said, a year. I was even sleeping out of my car and still going to work during that time period. And
mm.
it was rough, man. I will say that was probably one of the lowest moments of my life that I dealt with. I didn't do it for a long period of time. When I say sleeping in my car, but I did do it for a little period of time, and I would go to like the gym to take showers and then sleep in my car, go to work, and nobody at work knew. My parents didn't know. My brothers didn't know. Finally, I eventually broke down and told my older brother what I was going through. So what I will tell people, man, when you going through stuff, man, let people know, man. Because if it wasn't for probably me going through the stuff I went through with my mother and other
Okay,
issues that happened in my life, I probably wouldn't have got past that time.
that's a very valid statement, because as I was just talking about Michael Phelps, the rehabilitation center, when he realized, like, yo, I need to get help. I need to go see somebody. I need to get help. And he actually went to
Hmm.
go get help. He's doing a lot better. His wife
Yeah.
helps him. She now knows what he's going through, because he, again, like you said, he did the same thing. He held this stuff in. He didn't tell no one he was going through this, and he was just kind of lashing out by drinking, driving, doing a lot of drugs and stuff like that. And finally, when he told someone, now it's like a relief of stress. You just take all that burden off your body, all that extra
Hmm.
stress, and you become a different person.
Yeah. And then like to play the other side of it, the fact that I've gone through those things, when I see others maybe stressing out about things that's nowhere near I feel at that level, I
Hmm.
internally sometimes be like, dang man, you can't suck it up. Like you can't fight through that. I don't tell them, I don't verbally say those things, but sometimes inside I feel like, dang, if I can be homeless, sleeping out of my car, and still get up and go to work every day, why you can't deal with the little minor stuff that you deal with? But like I said before, everybody hasn't gone through, what I've gone through to be able to build up that strength, that tolerance. And before I say it's all on me, if it wasn't for the Most High God giving me strength and me praying for strength to get through it, I definitely wouldn't have got through it on my own. So I can't give all credit to myself. I have to give credit to the Most High for getting me through those dark, dark hours.
That's a fact. That's a fact. I mean, it's like equivalent to a millionaire, and they so used to living a certain lifestyle, and they go
Hmm.
from $1 million, and then all of a sudden they making $100,000 a year in a snap of a
Hmm.
finger. To us, it's like I live off of 40,000, $50,000 a year. You can't live off 100,000, but
Hmm.
it's like you said, everybody's stress level, everybody what they've been through is totally different. To them, that's a high level stress situation. To us, we're not used to it, so we're not used to having millions of dollars. It's a different environment.
And the thing about it is, when you get to that status where you're making millions, your bills rise up to that level.
Yeah,
So
living
it's
expenses, exactly.
yeah. So your living expenses then have risen up to where you need to make that type of money to be able to
Correct.
pay for everything. So when you making half of that or a third of that, it's just like you and me, working paycheck to
Correct. Correct.
paycheck.
Correct.
You
You
know,
paycheck to paycheck now. And you're not used to
yeah.
that. On top of that, too, when you're making that certain type of money, you in a certain type of class, you're around certain type of individuals. Those certain type of individuals always have certain type of beliefs and viewpoints and how they see you and how they see. I know people who make, I mean, I wouldn't say a million, but I've known somebody who's made 500, 600,000 a year, and their viewpoint is totally different compared to my viewpoint. So you got to also put
Hmm.
that in perspective. People sometimes live for other people, and they wonder if I don't have $1 million like I used to, what are they going to think about me? So
And with social media, it's a little different than when, I was coming up. Um, you got so many people having a voice now, and what qualifies them to even judge you and speak on your situation. You
correct.
know, somebody who's never played sports in their life are judging you on the mistakes you made as an 18, 19, 20-year old, and they made probably worse mistakes with you with
Facts.
less pressure.
Exactly. And no one saw because we didn't have social media. So they made that
Yeah.
mistake, and only close relatives and people that they were surrounded by saw those mistakes compared to the whole world. I
Hmm.
mean, we talk even 15-year-olds, you only got to be 18 these days. If you're a high elite athlete like the players we're talking about, 15, once you get in high school, you under a microscope. We see everything you do on social media.
Hmm. And this show is called Old Head Sports. I want to bring up a point. Growing up, um, I feel like as fans, we were spoiled and we are a little selfish. And the reason why I say that is most athletes, when we came up, were just focused on playing sports. There was only
Correct.
a handful of athletes that really spoke out about what was going on in the world. And you didn't have that pressure of social media making you feel like you need to speak about those things. So athletes would wins and losses was everything to athletes when I was growing up. That's
Correct.
all they cared about. It was nothing else. So as fans, we got spoiled by that. So when we get older and we watch a lot of these younger players that, and I'm not saying anything is wrong with it, but especially like you got LeBron, he's a great all-time great athlete, and you hear the things that he tweets and speaks out about what's going on in the world and the community. He's doing a lot of great things. But other athletes that do it but don't live up to greatness on the court, not able to, balance the two, we kind of look at them side eyed, like maybe you need to just focus on playing sports.
Correct. That whole shut up and dribble mentality, or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it in any type of sport. But yeah, saying that whole mentality there. And I think that comes from, I mean, I like you said, we so spoiled. It comes from when we was younger. We weren't used to seeing this stuff. And now we
Hmm.
got athletes speaking out about everything, every type of issue, if it's a problem, whether it's like vaccinated, unvaccinated, whether it's social justice, whether like any type of issue, we got athletes speaking out, not even just speaking about, actually doing something too.
Hmm.
So you got to be able to balance that. That can add on more stress. Mental health is serious, so more stress can cause more problems.
And speaking on balancing, I think that's a perfect transition to the next
Yes,
athlete I
sir.
would like to speak on is Naomi Osaka. Hopefully, I pronounced that correctly because anybody that personally knows me, I forget people names. I do it very often,
That's definitely correct, though, my brother.
but I come from the era that we gave people nicknames.
Facts. Big fact. We never said real names.
Yeah, you never said real names, man. But um, but I would like to speak on her. She was ranked number one in the world at one point as a tennis player. Um, she's spoken out a lot. Her father is from Haiti, if I'm not, mistaken. And there was an earthquake that happened, if you guys remember, that was devastated the island of Haiti. Um, and she made some tweets about it and spoke out about it. During an interview, this interviewer, and I want to paraphrase or basically say it how he said it. So he basically asked her. He said, "You you we know you have an issue with the media, but you also you also have outside interests beyond tennis that are served by having the platform that the media presents. Um, how do you think how do you think you may better balance that? Like how are you able to balance that? Basically, is what he said. And
Correct.
she kind of took offense to it in a way. But if you watch the interview, a lady stepped in and said, "Do you want to change the questions? Would you like to stop?" And she said no. She wanted to continue. So
Correct.
it continued on, and she seemed like she was triggered by what the interviewer asked her. She ended up getting emotional and started crying because of it. And I watched the interview probably 3 or 4 times because I want to show compassion to this young lady. I wanted to understand and feel what she felt in that moment. And I even got my fiance to watch the video to get a woman's perspective, which my fiance deals with anxiety. So I wanted to get that perspective, and I didn't see how he came at her in a wrong way. Later, her agent put out a statement saying that he was bullying her. I didn't hear that,
I saw the
me
same
personally.
interview. I watched it just like you about 4 or 5 times. And the lady did say, "Yeah, did you want to rephrase it?" She ended up having the same lady ended up having to say, you want to just go to a different question." But me
Hmm.
personally, I heard no actual malice intent from the question. Honestly, I didn't. I think it was one of those things that got it was a trigger word or a trigger question. like you
Hmm.
said, and she's probably dealing with some. Again, we don't know. They never really
Hmm.
spoke on too much of her actual mental health issues. I've tried to find information on it, but I couldn't find
Yeah.
too much. But they never spoke on it, so maybe she's dealing with something that we don't know, and that was just a trigger for her, and it threw her off. She obviously seemed rattled by the question, whereas to us, it on the outside looking in, it, I didn't see nothing malicious about it. So something happened. Now,
Well,
my question.
she ended up
Oh, I'm sorry.
pulling out of the French. I'm sorry. She ended up pulling out of the French Open because she said she didn't want to be a distraction to the other players.
Correct.
So evidently she realized that she had some mental issues going on that she wasn't able to continue.
No, that I also want to throw out too. It was the French Open too, by the way. But I also want to throw out that the the French boss basically said it was a cowardly act. Called her. That's what
Hmm.
he wrote. Said it was a cowardly act. But then kind of later on, which is ironic to me, that you would say it was a cowardly act and she didn't answer questions. And then when they asked him about it, he was like, "Oh," he changed his tune. He didn't even say cowardly no more when they asked him about it.
Hmm.
And then they tried to ask him questions and he walked off. I thought that was
Yeah.
ironic because he did the same thing she did. So it's a little
I
confusing,
think
but
I think the reason why he called her a cow because she's the number one drawing. So
correct. It's about that
like,
money.
what if Jordan in his prime, which he did, ended up walking away from the sport of basketball for 2 years, and it was speculations that he owed people money and all these things
Hmm.
came out. But if you got the biggest draw in the sport saying that they don't want to compete in it, you're just thinking business. You're not thinking about their well-being,
Correct.
how they're feeling, that this is a young woman. All you're thinking about is the money that you're going to lose. So in a
Correct.
moment, I think he was reacting and how he was feeling. He was basically acting emotionally and thinking
Correct.
about financially and instead of thinking about this woman's well-being. So later he had to double back on what he said because he got pressured by the media, social
Hmm.
media, when they started attacking him for his comments.
Correct. Kind of like Dan Gilbert and LeBron. When he said it was a very emotional statements. But the question I kind of have for you is again, I still didn't see no malicious intent to be honest, but
No, not in
um,
this situation.
not in this situation. The question I have for you is if you're Naomi Osaka and you feel, cause she says she's a super introvert. I just want to throw that out
Hmm.
there too. So she says she's a super introvert. She has troubles and problems with talking to people regularly. Like me and you just talking face to face, she has problems talking to that. If human to human
Hmm.
interaction. So if you had that type of situation or that type of problem and you have to answer media, what is the best way to balance that because you still have to have your media contractual obligations. So you could do the
I think,
Marshawn Lynch, or you could,
hmm,
it's a different way too, though.
yeah, I think she need to just reach out to like people like Serena Williams and different athletes and talk to them about how did they deal with the media and balancing mental health and having to speak in front of people after
Mm-hmm.
a loss, a
Mm-hmm.
devastating loss,
Yep.
or you still playing when you lost a family member and
Mm-hmm.
all those things. So I think she need to reach out to older, more experienced athletes and see how they dealt with it, and then also maybe seek out professional help. Speak with a therapist. Get in front of a mock media, people
Facts.
like make
Fact.
them have set up mock interviews where they ask her certain questions so she can build up that tolerance and be able to maybe be more witty and come back with things of her own to shut up interviewers that maybe step on across that line and say things that's offensive or triggering.
That's a good transition for me too, because my next thing is there is media personnel. I like to always say, and I don't know about, I can only speak in America, but in America, we always like to punish the victim and not the bully. And what I mean by that is, again, I didn't see no malicious intent, but let's go back to school. When you in school, let's say you got a bully in school, right? Let's say somebody
Hmm.
decides to stand up to that bully and hit that bully back. Normally, the person who hits the bully gets in trouble. Now,
Oh yeah.
you could have stopped the bully from jump, and you could have never had this situation. But for some reason, it doesn't work like that. And I'm bringing that up because it was the media tends to ask questions that are triggering or are out of line. And one of the ones I want to bring up is the Shaq one, right? Shaq was
Hmm.
playing in Miami, and they were in the finals, and he had a media personnel asked Shaq, "Hey, if how much do you want to win?" Basically saying, "Hey, if
Hmm.
there were venom in your mother's upper chest, would you suck the venom out to win a championship?" Right now, what kind of question that has nothing to do with, like, honestly, what kind of question is
Hmm.
that? Now, Shaq, obviously, as you said, he's a professional. He was witty enough to understand and say, "Hey, I figure out a way to get out of this." He said, "No, but I would for your mother," right? He figured out a way to
Hmm.
get that. But another one I want to bring up too is, again, we pacifying a bully, but the one where we got this whole sound bite. I remember being young, and I was Allen Iverson was one of my favorite players, and we all know the practice rant, but we didn't
Hmm.
never know the backstory behind it. The media
Hmm.
basically took something, ran with it, put a whole clip about it, and all we saw was practice, 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 and we didn't know that his best friend just died, and he's up there asking a question about practice. So
Hmm.
it's we never there's no fines. I haven't heard of media personnel getting fines for asking irrelevant questions. So what do you do for media in that instance?
Um, I think, I mean, I feel like they should do something about the media. The only thing is, I feel like they want those type of moments to happen. It creates
Of course,
clickbait later on,
of
like
course,
on YouTube. So
of course.
if you overreact to a question, they can paint a picture about you, paint a narrative about you, and on top of that, if you're a minority, they can paint a picture about us as a
That's
whole,
facts.
black and brown. But I view it like this, and I know you've probably been in those situations on the job. How many times have you had a boss or a coworker say something to you that probably made you want to knock them out? But you
Facts.
thought about that, I got responsibilities at home that I need to take care of. Yeah, I can act emotionally and knock him out, but at the end of the day, me knocking him out, what is that going to solve? Me overreacting, what is that going to solve? It's only going to get me maybe jail time, me losing my home, me losing my family, the possibility of that. So it's tough, man. It's tough at times. I deal with it a lot being a supervisor at my job. It's so many times that I be wanting to go off in certain situations, but I can't. I have to think about first, I got to be professional. And second, I have too many responsibilities to overreact to situations. So I, I guess people just got to think before they react. And that's normal. No matter what job you're doing, you have to think before you react emotionally.
No, and that's a fact. I'm 100% agreeing with you, but that means you still pacifying a bully though. Not saying that they're a
No,
bully, but in
yeah.
in that instance, you're still saying, "Hey, it's okay to," because if you're the victim and then you do something, I always say, if somebody hit me in my arm and I knock you out, why are you mad at me for knocking you out
Yeah.
when you hit me, right? You should be mad at the person hitting me in the arm first. This would have
You
never
know what I
happened.
think? I think it's going to take for probably the teams and the players to join together and be like, you know what? We're not going to no longer do these interviews after games if they're going to come at us a certain way. So they're going to all have to come together, which with every situation like this, they're going to all have to band
Correct.
together and be on the same page for it to change. Because if it's only really affecting a few people, they're not going to do anything to change it. It
Correct.
got to affect the majority.
Correct. You're speaking a valid point there. So I just want to transition on to Delante West, um,
Okay.
ex NBA player. Never was an All Star, but he did have elite level talent. Excellent
Hmm.
scorer, left hander. Played 12 seasons in the NBA. Um, he was actually diagnosed with bipolar in
Mm,
2008, a long time ago. So before we obviously in the outside world even knew, he was actually diagnosed by the NBA with bipolar. So
mm,
NBA teams, front offices, and coaches, GMs, they already knew this information. We just didn't know this. So by the time we saw him lashing out or doing stuff, we was always confused. It's always that same thing, like he's getting millions of dollars, he got everything he wanted. Why is he doing this? But I also wanted to
mm,
bring you up a point too, at a point in time where he was young and he was diagnosed with, by medical doctors too, with bipolar. He didn't know what it was. He said he didn't even really know how to spell it, anything.
yeah,
But he was younger. He was living with his moms. He hurt his leg, and his outlet was basketball. He couldn't play basketball because he hurt his leg. Stopped going to school. His mom sent him to live with his dad, and when he was there with his dad, basically he started to do stuff for attention. Right? He started swallowing pills. He was trying to kill himself. He kept telling his dad he was going to kill himself. All that, and
man.
yeah, this is it. And so um, I think his situation, honestly, he was so young when he was going through this, and I think if he got the attention that he was actually seeking, he could
Mm-hmm,
have been a lot better off when he was older. But since he never really did get that attention that he was seeking, that's what he said he was doing it for. He literally said, "Hey, I was trying to get attention. I was trying to
mm-hmm,
get help, but nobody helped me." And now you fast forward to years on down the road, and it seemed like his problems somewhat subsided only because he actually had an outlet now. His leg wasn't hurt no
mm-hmm.
more. He was able to play basketball. But once he stopped playing basketball, the same situation started arising again. I think for him a recurring theme is he couldn't play basketball anymore, and that now your mind is wandering. An idle mind is a
Mm-hmm.
devil's workshop, is what I heard a lot.
Yeah, that's
Mark
true,
Cuban,
man.
yeah, Mark Cuban started helping him. He was out on the streets. He had picket signs asking for food. He had no clothes. No shoes. He was homeless. So Mark Cuban ended up putting him in a hotel. But I mean, it's just a sad story. It's crazy how basically people ignored the fact that he was bipolar. They knew this
Mm-hmm.
information, but didn't do anything about it in the NBA.
Yeah. Yeah, man. To wrap it up, it's sad because when my mother was going through those um issues, the family told her that nothing was wrong with her.
Mm,
And then like especially like when I was growing up, you know, people would use the word like crazy and stuff like that, which you definitely can't use those type of words now. But it wasn't awareness about mental health like it is today. You know, like
correct.
people were dumbing up, oh, you crazy, you loony, blah blah blah, or you faking it. You know, a lot of people in the
Yep.
family thought she was faking it, that she really wasn't going through those things. So, um, like you said, once he started playing basketball again, he had an outlet. I say that to anybody that's not playing sports, just anybody that's going through anything. You got to find an outlet. You got to find something that you love to do to take your mind off of things. Because when I was going through what I was going through with my mother, when I was on a basketball court, I wasn't thinking about what was going on at the house. You know, that was my place where I didn't care about nothing else that was going on. All I cared was crossing up the dude that's in front of me, taking him to the hole,
Yep.
making him
Yep.
look bad. If he dribbling in front of me, I'm trying to rob him. I'm trying to make him look bad.
Yep.
If people come up by us playing basketball, the stadium, the court get full, I'm showing out. Like I
Yep.
love
I
that
got
attention,
to.
you know. And so my mind wasn't even thinking about those things. So you got to find something to take your mind off of what you're dealing with. And then you got to tell somebody what you're going through, man. Talk with somebody that's been through it before, that understand you. Don't go to somebody that's going to brush you off and be like, man, I don't want to hear that. You know, try to seek help as soon as possible, man. Um, but man, CEO, man, I appreciate it like always, man. This was a real sensitive topic. I really didn't want to offend anybody by speaking on this, but I want to bring awareness to it because it is a thing that many millions of people go through every day, whether they play sports, famous, or anything. So I appreciate it, man.
Yes, sir. Always. You already know.
Yeah, man. And I appreciate everybody that tuned in and joined Old Head Sports, man. We trying to do something different, bring y'all different dialogue, talking about different aspects of the game from an old head's perspective and what you call yourself, a tweener.
Yeah, tweener,
Yeah.
tweener.
So, but yeah, man, leave comments, man. Tell us what you feel like we need to work on, topics that we need to talk about in the future, man. We also have a segment coming up. We're going to give our top five favorite ball handlers, point guards,
Yes,
shooting
sir.
guards, centers. So that's coming. So a lot of great things is coming, man. So thanks for tuning in. It's Ben Hamin Walker, and it's the real CEO. Peace and love.